Thanks everybody for coming out. I am happy to introduce the two people I'm super excited that are going to be reading for us tonight. So please give your full attention to the following two participants in tonight's festivities. Danielle Kotrla is a PhD student in philosophy. She's working in aesthetics, more specifically. She has been she's not a formal part of the creative writing program, such as that exists in the English department, but she's been taking workshops with several of us in the creative writing program. She's a fantastic poet, and she will be reading from her poetry this evening. And Sam Horgan, who will be following her, has a slightly more multimodal approach to his presentation this evening, a surprise for you. He is an MFA candidate in sculpture nominally in the Lamar Dodd School of Art. And I say nominally because he's somewhat, in an affirmative way, undisciplined, which is to say he's on the books as being a sculptor, but he is in fact working across several different media, including writing. And so I'm just very, very happy that they're able to be with us tonight to present their work to you. I know they brought some of their people with them. I'm excited if their peers and their faculty mentors can see them do their thing. And I will leave it at that. Danielle will read first. We'll have a short pause, and then Sam Horgan will follow her. Thank you for being here this evening. Woo! There's been a change to this evening's program. I present you Sam Horgan.
Hello.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going?
Louder.
Hello. Hello? Oh, I can raise it. Awesome. Sorry, my hands are so full. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to do, I think, a couple puppet shows for you guys. This is called The Owl of Minerva. It's 2019, and I'm hooking up with the DJ after hot mass. Sitting on the edge of their bed, I'm listening to them explain the phenomenology of spirit to me, where they wipe their makeup off, and I understand it all for a few minutes of glittering comprehension. This fades by daybreak, washed away by booze, pills, and poppers, the perfect logic and poetry of their explanation completely excised from my memory. It's 2015, and my dad is getting some cash for a load of scrap metal on Anderson Creek Road. The guy operating the crusher is telling us about dating again after his common-law wife died of a brain aneurysm. You just gotta get back out there, you know? He nods sagely. Standing there awkward, I look off into the yard, past the arrangement of machinery and twisted metal in low-slung outbuildings and onto the lawn of the adjoining ranch home. At the far end, there was a square flower bed filled with mulch, with a barn light rigged up on a utility pole emerging from the center. The four corners of the structure were occupied by 4 owls, the heavy plastic anti-bird kind they sell at the hardware store. As the sun went down, the light came on, bathing the owls below in a weird glow, their beady eyes glinting across the yard toward me. It's the year 2000, and 26-year-old Austin area radio host Alex Jones is crashing through the bushes above the campground of the Bohemian Club in Monte Rio, California, accompanied by his cameraman and a journalist from the BBC. Later that evening, they surreptitiously filmed the blue-blooded fraternity's opening ceremony, the cremation of care, wherein an effigy representing the attendees' worldly cares is burned to initiate a week of summer fun. Walter Cronkite provides voiceover narration, played on tape over loudspeakers, echoing through the Redwood Grove. Despite the grainy quality of the resulting footage, it is Jones' contention that this is a literal or allegorical human sacrifice to the ancient Canaanite god Moloch. This all takes place before a 40-foot structure of steel-reinforced concrete, shaped to resemble a massive owl. It's 1821, and George Friedrich Hegel writes in the preface of Elements of the Philosophy of Right, when philosophy paints its gray on gray, then is a shape of life grown old. The owl of Minerva spreads its wings only with the coming of the dusk. It's 1799, and Francisco Goya completes the 43rd etching in Los Capricios, comprising a figure doubled over on his desk, a monstrous owl perched at his shoulder. An inscription at the bottom left quarter reads, El sueño de la razón produce monstruos. The dream of reason produces monsters. It's the 1st century AD, and Pliny the Elder writes in his natural history, the birds of the night also have crooked talons, such as the owlet, horned owl, and screech owl, for instance, the sight of all of which is defective in the daytime. The horned owl is especially funereal, and is greatly abhorred in all auspices of a public nature. It inhabits deserted places, and not only desolate spots, but those of a frightful and inaccessible nature. The monster of the night, its voice is heard, not with any tuneful note, but emitting a sort of shriek. Hence that it is looked upon as a direful omen to see in a city, or even so much as in the daytime. I know, however, for a fact, that it is not portentous of evil when it settles on the top of a private house. It cannot fly whither it wishes in a straight line, but is always carried along by a sidelong movement. It's the 8th century BC, and the prophet Isaiah proclaims in the judgment against the nations, for the Lord is a day of vengeance, a year of retribution to uphold Zion's cause. Edom's streams will be turned into pitch, her dust into burning sulfur. Her land will become blazing pitch and will not be quenched day or night. Its smoke will rise forever from generation to generation. It will lie desolate. No one will ever pass through it again. The desert owl and the screech owl will possess it. The great owl and the raven will nest there. God will stretch out over Edom the measuring line of chaos and the plumb line of desolation. Her nobles will have nothing there to be called a kingdom. All her princes will vanish away. Thorns will overrun her citadels, nettles and brambles her strongholds. She will become a haunt for jackals and a home for owls. Okay, that's it with this one. I'm going to neatly fold this piece of paper and pull my second puppet up out of my pocket. So that's what's occurring right now. But I have to remember which pocket. Okay. This is a sock puppet. So this was a sock. Or this is a sock. It comes in a pair of socks. Okay.
Your text is flying away.
Oh, it is? That's okay. It's a bird. Okay. This is a second puppet show, and it goes like this. I was the tender flesh and I was the razor. I was the buttock and I was the fly. I was the upper atmosphere, nuclear detonation. I was the spyglass and I was the eye. And I was born to be the world's greatest lover. And that's the work that I'm entitled to do. I was born to be the world's greatest lover. Or that's the work I'm applying to do. And I've busted some broncos now and again. And I've rode on the purple sage. I've made my bones as a rodeo clown, breaking hearts on the screen and the stage. But I was born to be the world's greatest lover, because love is a thing that's worthwhile to do. And I was born to be the world's greatest lover, and loving is the work that I'm trying to do. Now don't fall in love around too much concrete. If you trip and fall, you're bound to hurt yourself. But hey, it's a way to make a living. And who would want to be somebody else? And I am longing for you in my heart. My blue eyes are crying in the rain. A kiss from you would be a taste of heaven, a horse tranquilizer for my pain. And I was born to be the world's greatest lover. Despite all my love that I've wasted, it's true. And I was born to be the world's greatest lover. Despite all that love, I'm still aiming on you. And bonny, bright, and lovely, I dreamt the dream of Venus, and I could have been contender for Playboy of the Western world. I'm losing the words. Amorous and no apologies. By amateur means I'm doing it for love. And I have to, I got to, I must make ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Darn it, socks, diamonds, and rust. Ain't nothing. It's nothing to me, man. Okay, that's it.
to never agree to follow a puppet show. I just want to say thank you very quickly to Drew for inviting me to read tonight. This is my first time since being here as a PhD student in Phil, getting to read publicly, and it, as I've been thinking about this week coming up, I've sort of been reflecting on the fact that I think I ultimately chose to come here because it felt like the place where these sorts of, coming out of the MFA, these two interests of mine would be something that was not merely tolerated, but celebrated and allowed to be pursued enthusiastically. So I want to thank my advisor in Meskin for letting me pursue those things wholeheartedly from the Phil department, and Drew, who I cold emailed a couple of years ago and said, can I come hang out, embraced me wholeheartedly and has been a big supporter of my work since. So thank you both. As a sort of introduction to the poems I'm going to read, I've got 4 of them. I just wanted to say a couple of things to help contextualize my own work, mostly by way of introducing the questions that I find really interesting and profitable to sort of think about poetically. So I think maybe primarily this is a sort of definitional question about what it means to return, but also what do we do when we realize that our grasp of places and of others is perhaps unstable, and what knowledge, sort of, if any, can we make in the aftermath of that realization? So this first poem came out of the first seminar that I did with Drew in his forms seminar, and I found it really interesting to think about the Fibonacci sequence as a sort of shape that a poem can take. So this poem does so, and I think is also trying to circle around this question of patterns and of their discovery and what we do with them. So this is Poem with Lines from Emerson's Circles, or Riprap. 1. We've reached the point. There's nothing left to say. Virginia, we've hiked the miles in South Shenandoah, the heat unbearable if not for company. Today, a game of circles and the geometry of desertion. This trail trying ground for another infinitely possible world. Your wife finished with school and a son that sleeps through the night. My father upright and well. His voice on the line, despite distance, is steady. And our mutual friend, who will drive tomorrow to see, is not limp with grief, a portrait of the home we've both left and are increasingly hesitant to hold in the light. These moods of ours do not believe in each other. Fog keeps us honest to the ridgeline, and sun showers, the occasional unexpected downpour. In one, I shout and point toward the trail that was, a minute ago, so obvious to us both. Divine moment, unable to abolish our contrition. 2. You simply can't get away from things in the summer as you can in the fall. The only sin this season, limitation. My father has been, for months now, moving so slowly I spend nights imagining he gets stuck in the same room for weeks. Your wife shudders at the sight of her body in the mirror. It is smaller and increasingly exposed, jagged under your palm in the dark. At Chimney Rock, new growth sprouts from the cracks, straddling the line between restraint and unbridled. We have never been trying to get away from this, only to imagine it otherwise. The out and back allows it, and the time to prepare for believing, and it not being true, that we have seen all of this before. The trailhead, perhaps, but nothing in between. Tomorrow, we will sit around a fire and listen again to our friend narrate the single moment his mother died. We will smoke cigarettes down to the half point, just as we always have. But before, a need to drive south, and I will think then of God and loneliness, his own, of course, but mostly our own. She was there, our friend will say, and then suddenly she wasn't. High in the valley, I can see a single bright house breaking through the backcountry. This next poem takes on a similar landscape insofar as it's sort of physically set in the same place. I don't think there's much you need to know about this one. The title of the poem and the place are both set in reference to Hungry Mother State Park, which is a little park that is just a few miles north of Tennessee border in Marion, Virginia. And the history of the park is really interesting. So I was just wanted to think about the story and the way that those are sort of passed down and sort of given the way that we name. So this is Hungry Mother. Molly, today a man delayed me an hour telling your story, but I knew. This, the real danger of another hike up the same mountain. Truth is, I assumed he would tell it quickly, all of us pretending we were born with the gist of most stories already stored somewhere inside, but Molly he spared no details. He'd taken the only bench hauled up the summit of Molly's knob by some unlucky CCC worker years ago and spread the contents of his pack upon it. Peanut butter and dried fruit purchased from a general store in the fake Bavarian village in the valley below us, and then offered them to me, as if my journey had begun far from here and had been longer and more arduous than I could ever pretend that it was. Another truth, I thought that by refusing his kind offer, we would make a pact of silence, but it was one-sided and did not last. Molly, I am worrying more lately that I am assuming too much of the people around me and cannot stop. He asks if I know what's happened in these woods, and after, tells of Marley and her daughter stranded in them for weeks, aftermath of escape from a danger unnamed, the source contested but ever present. The man thinks it cryptid, Mothman or Death Cat, and I do not disagree with him or say that we're not in the right state to blame those beasts, or that the answer is likely disappointing, more than likely human, the typical violence we've been practicing and perfecting with each other every season since. Molly, if it's true everyone ran from everything then, we only pretend that we do not do so now. He tells me of your collapse at the foot of a mountain and the steady resolve of your small daughter who waited with you through the long night of winter and then left. Molly, I want to be surprised when we fail to resist the animal instinct inside that keeps us each routed toward home, even if we lack a sense of what exactly that word means, or keep some fear that we will not know what to do when we arrive. But the man reminds me the story ends not merely with a young girl's flight, but a daughter who searches out help and finds it, is carried from the woods by the sympathy of men, yet can only utter, hungry mother in response, no matter the question. Molly, I think often we are merely the language of our own exhaustion, but maybe this is what it takes to learn how to define our lives, the state of being, then relation, eternal recurrence, even if the immediate feeling has passed. The question in each and everything, do you want this again? And innumerable times again. I realize you have been told this story before. When the men returned to the mountain, you were dead and had been for days, yet you were to them hungry mother, and so remain to us too. This next poem is part of a smaller project I've been working on for the last few years, which is a series of poems in conversation with the visual artist John Baldessari's 1986 collection, Hegel's Cellar, which is a really fantastic collection worth looking into. It's sort of what I think of as quintessential Baldessari. It's, images superimposed, really saturated and vibrant shapes that draw attention to and block out different aspects of the image. And I found it really interesting to think through, the ways that we interact with each other in particular places, in front of large doors and museums, and the sort of strange shapes that bodies can take in those places. So this is another from the forum seminar that I wrote called Cavalry, not Cavalry, importantly. And just in the absence of having an image, which is a real bummer, the way you can sort of think of it is it's really super saturated, it's hard to make out details, but there's a line of mounted soldiers sort of all on sort of dark bays or black horses, and then one sort of dominant figure on a white horse about 3/4 of the way through to the left, and all of this sort of upheld by this really interesting sort of blue line at the bottom of the image. So, paint that mental picture as you listen. So this is Cavalry. That thick blue line of tape might as well be holding the world up. The only fact from the figures, not the riders lost on top of their horses, nor the horses themselves, are that animal bodies can rest upon animal bodies and streak across the clearing, while those markers of the human spirit, saddle pads and breastplates, helmets and spears, get washed out by light. There's no human way to tell where horse ends and man begins, even for the one off-center, hooves caught in the third canter beat while both front legs plant the earth. Imagine the night before, those faceless horse soldiers quiet in the campground, and a boy, prepared for the daylight charge, confesses across the fire that sometimes he's not sure he's felt anything that isn't just some cheap, useless extension of the world out there. When I step back, each man is, at most, a finger's length. The woman beside me points to the horse we're meant to point to, and the man with her laughs. He tells her he read once that there are no white horses, only gray ones that lost their color. But she's hardly listening, thinking of how, as a young girl, she learned what fear was by feeling under her palm the muscles in the neck of a chestnut mare twitch. He taps the label with his knuckle. They've put the L in the wrong place, he tells her, and people are just so careless these days. While he goes on, she imagines the boy in the etching learned fear this way too, his hand mistaking a twitch for simple motion, the realization that often we learn things far too late to do much of anything with them. And I've got just one more poem here to close. I'll let it speak for itself, but say that this is a sort of aspirational poem, and that is an attitude I find myself trying increasingly to adopt. So thank you all for being here tonight, for listening. I look forward to celebrating the launch of Drew's book. So this is The Blues. I feel sorry to have been annoyed by him, the man in the bar who, every 3 minutes, gets up from his stool to cross the room and place coins in the machine to hear again that Johnny Cash cover of Desperado. Not a new occurrence, the bartender tells me, and they've asked him to stop. When he gets to the box, he grips both sides of it like a pulpit, blue light emanating up to wash his face over as he reaches, slowly, into his pockets for change. He's a man devoted, like Yves Klein, who wanted to make a bluer blue, so he did. Walked across Paris with an envelope that said he did, and painted, in the years that followed, one canvas, then another, with nothing but the color. IKB 191, IKB 79. Thick blocks of textured blue, meant to represent the infinite, or the myth of it. A decade later, across the Atlantic, a man keeps his job at Time by pulling tear sheets and clipping cowboys from cigarette ads. I was looking for something wild, he said, and this is where I found it. In the Re photographs, the untitled cowboy is, like all archetypal cowboys, riding west forever under a sky walled with clouds against a blue so blue it'll make you sick. Like that day at the summit of Mary's Rock where I met a man walking to Maine because, like so many others, he wants to change his life. He tells me that he's made it through most of Virginia but lacks 1,000 miles, and it feels like he might just be walking forever. From his pocket, he pulls a tiny wheel, instrument made to measure blueness, paper thin, divided into 52 degrees, almost white next to a navy so deep, it seems that if the sky were ever that color, we might be in serious trouble. When he lets me hold the gradient of it up to the horizon, there is no match. In the bar, there's a new silence, my body primed for the ending note to roll over to its start. The bartender tells me the man's out for a smoke. He'll be back. And when he is, I'll listen with him, as if for the first time. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Andrew Zawacki doesn't need any introduction, and I'm not going to introduce him by reading a big bio, but please look at his beautiful book. And books are for sale out here after Andrew Zawacki reads. Please go and collect your copy. It's my delight, Andrew, to introduce you like this, and all of us gathering here. Today we are here to celebrate Andrew's book. It's called These Late Eclipses, and it was written during the pandemic, during the lockdown. I just bought my copy, and I think all of us can't make sense of the world anymore, and I believe that tonight when I go back and dip myself into this book, dive into it, I think it will help me make sense. So thank you, Andrew, for writing this. Please come and read some poems and celebrate this book. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks. You smell good. Engine eclogue. Cutting my daughter's hair on the porch as the garden, doused in bourbon sundown, blenches to gray in the widening dusk, lightning bugs igniting along a hedge. Reel to reel, cawing up in the laurel oak, a two-stroke accent, grave, aigu, as if the world, like a wheel, were out of true. Thank you, Sam and Danielle, for reading from your work. Can we have one more round of applause, please, for these fine writers? I'm looking forward to Danielle's book Those Baldessari poems are absolutely at the center of that manuscript, and that's going to be a really hot thing when it happens. Danielle has a MFA from Virginia Tech, which is why she made her way into the creative writing curriculum. And I'm really, really excited about what you're doing. Sam, where are you? Oh yeah, so I'm on Sam's MFA committee. He's about to finish his program here. And he and his advisor, Isabel Loring Wallace, and I have plans for Sam, who needs to move on to a critical theory program somewhere. His degree won't be contingent upon that happening, but we feel pretty strongly that this is coming through he's in perhaps the wrong department, so we will do our best to colonize him. Thank you all for being here. I have students here. I have former students here. I'm not giving any extra credit to my current students, as they know. That seems far too narcissistic. So they're here of their own accord, seemingly, but thank you for being here. It's very sweet. Friends from my freshman year, sophomore year in college are here from Atlanta. I'm naming no dates. I'm not specifying when exactly that happened, but it wasn't super recently. One of my brothers from the local chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is here. Friends from all walks of life, thank you for being here to help me celebrate this book. I will pause at various points to say some thank yous. I would also like to point out that 2/3 of my nuclear family are here. This is kind of an unprecedented event for me. One of my 2 daughters is here. The other one went to dance. She decided that that was more important. It's a tough sell. Poetry reading is a tough sell, even though there's no Q&A at the end of this or anything. But my daughter May is here. I would like to point her out. And also, her best friend Ashley is here, who is my gangster. And I'm really glad you're here. If this is your first poetry reading, we'll talk after this. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
I just want to say that Ella is home. She said it will be too boring.
Oh yeah, my older daughter, who's 15, said this would be too boring. So that's why she's not here. At least you get honesty from your teenagers. Words worthlessness. Cell sites go on to infinity over the rustic lexicon. An algorithm curates what I am. Bus stop shot on Kotrla 400. A Nowheresville diner, her hand on the glass. Pastel truck at a Texaco station, vacant telephone booth. I set the receiver down and walk, insomniac into the amniotic night. Catif. Our life hedges into subjunctive, all default settings upset. The greenwood stitched together by the spacing between the pines. A reek of wet fur and feral catastrophe, grisly as it gets, is ferried forth from the murk on a havering draft. Bejesus, as in, it scared the living out of me. Nature poem. A text arrives to update me on the tracking of a package from a shop that melted last year into air, which wears its invisibility all of a sudden on my sleeve. Wasps sculpt a nest in the outlet box, my body a fire diamond of Russian dolls. 3,4 xylenol, paraben, phthalate, plutonium-239. You'll remember in The Wizard of Oz that the Tin Man and his company were instructed to pay no attention to the little man who was behind the curtain. This is a reference to that. It's a high art poem. This is called The Wizard of Oz. The 2 terabyte storm brings a fuck ton of rain, wind a flailing wolf tone as it skewers the blackjack oak brought down and back. As if cataclysm came in degrees, shatter, shatterer, shatterist. When the weather finally clears, we find no man behind the curtain to pay no attention to. Shallow hollow. A goner on the naked flints, exposed for middle gray. No, I'm not okay. The damp wind dwindles to sample itself, scourged by the sequent effects. What did you think? What else does air do? Stare it straight in the face, it'll turn you to stone. Look away, it will turn you to stone. A fable. I nuked the outlet cover so the wasps are ornery, doubling down. Screw their quick vindictiveness, their wary holding pattern by the plants. But if I were them, my family in there, some coward come vex my home, I'd do what I had to do. I'd end the motherfucker too. Sonic fiber optic. Crepuscular garden in stereo. Cicadas jamming my left ear, traffic spamming the right. At full capacity, turning patients away. What of those shapes in the foreground, lacing the soundscape to violence at last, its scaleless calculus? Can you transit inside a frequency? What does it say? An ontology, all one word. Deepfake is the new voodoo. I drop food color into the toilet tank to check if it's running a leak. Facing revenue shortfalls, reflecting mounting concerns. In our garden, a brown bird hacks a garter snake with its beak. Look, where once there was no there, now there is. I'd like to say a trio of thanks. First of all, to Gareth Crosby from the Environmental and Landscape Design Program, who is the director and curator of this situation. She's the one who made this available to us. Thank you to her for walking me and Jamie through here to get a kind of lay of the physical land. So it's great to be out here. I feel like the creative writing program is probably going to use this more frequently in the future. It's a really nice night to be out here. So thanks to her for helping us out. Thank you to Department Head Roland Begshow. Many of you know him. Those of you who don't, if you feel like saying thanks to someone for the beer that you're drinking or the wine that you're drinking and the food that you're eating, he's Daddy Warbucks as far as this is concerned, and he's been excellent to the department in all kinds of ways. We're actually in a very good place with him here, so thank you to Roland, and especially to Jamie Mays, who's in the back. I've never DJ'd a day in my life. I was thinking about this on the way over here, but I kind of picture Jamie as a DJ who like has, fashionably the earphones are off the one ear while she's listening to the record that you're hearing over here. That's kind of like the main melody, but with her left hand, she's like sampling and intercutting the record on the right and queuing up the next piece of sound. In the meantime, the rest of us, the faculty, the colleagues, we just show up and dance, and she makes it look extremely easy. And thank you to the graduate students who helped her set this entire thing up. But Jamie, it will never go without saying thank you for making all of this possible. Also, thank you for talking me out of not tanking this, because the book kept getting pushed back. And at some point I was like, we don't really need to do this, it's not a big deal. And she said, no, we're gonna do this, it's gonna be really fun. So thank you for sticking with it. Subject abject. Above the reified flyover state of a Publix parking lot, the sky devolves to blah blue, a force-quit moon its cryptocurrency. It looked pretty. What first-person nano-self shall I upscale while I wait? Vaporized ethyl acrylate, trashing the atmosphere, or that turkey vulture scavenging the dead? I think we all have this neighbor, probably, or several of them. Ecotone, where Exo-City intersects the supra countryside, late in our lower infolific age on Saturday. My neighbor's in post-production, tweaking his property. He sees this as a political act, wielding his pressure washer like a taser against the garage. No gradient tool for laying down a law. This is one of the several ingenious poems in this book in which the title ends up being part of the first line. You guys can't see this book. I'm not sure it matters, but it's all prose poems. They're each 3 lines, for lack of a better word. The designer, Jeff Clark, who's an absolutely brilliant designer of poetry, as many of you know, recapitulated that on the cover and on the back as well. I think of it as a kind of data scrawl, or like when you're watching the news and you see the ticker run along the bottom. So they all look like this, which is why they're roughly the same shape. Well, they're certainly the same shape and they're roughly the same duration when I read them. But in some cases, as the poems went on across the course of the pandemic, you start to need a little more room, but I didn't want to break the contract I'd made with the size of the poem, so the titles ended up getting conscripted into the first lines of the poem. So this is the first of, I think, 2 of them I'll read that way. The passion, according to no one specific, I and alter I. Right quick trek to the mailbox and back, Lotamax, 2 drops per day. Bend in the wind brought dog-like under military control. In the wake of, after several weeks, we anti-us. Outside, there is no outside. My hatred has nowhere to go. No showdown. Awake all hours as a glacial erratic, static inside the demolition of night, the contrails of night. Less lethal weaponry, as if one could die in gradations. Asks a counter voice, is this the intro or outro at the 0 degree of the plural? When I walk out my door, the absence is everywhere. The title of this book, by the way, in case you're wondering, These Late Eclipses, comes from a monologue by Gloucester in King Lear. I read almost all of Shakespeare's poems again. My goal was to read all of them in the summer of the pandemic. I didn't quite do that, I must admit. And I don't want to tell you how it ends for Gloucester. Those of you who haven't finished that play just yet, it doesn't end particularly well. But these late eclipses is a phrase he uses when thinking through the landscape that is King Lear. There's a second epigraph to this book that comes from Adorno's Minima Moralia, which is, by the shame of still having air to breathe in hell. The book was written between March 11, 2020, which is just 2 days, I think, before the university closed down. Most of us were at home grading papers and midterms and stuff. So there was a brief opening when I thought, okay, this is going to be suspended for a short while. I'll probably get some writing done. I tricked myself into writing some short poems. And it concludes at September 11, 2020, which needs no introduction. And at some point when I realized this was a project that was happening and that I was on more or less a pace of a poem every other day, I figured that I would set a constraint for myself, which was 90 poems, and that would be that. And that's sort of how it shook out. Snowware. Zone lines in white rot. The roads are spalted with rock salt, with slush, solar flare. On a mountain of the private mind, monadic, non-nomadic, a retinal sun is separating red, green, blue. Tele-local snow keeps falling. Phony nickel, negative dime. What I can't name, I love. Here's the second of the brilliant poems in which the title slides into the first line. I mean, I should have just done the whole book like that, I guess. No song beyond contingency. The future I drag my fragments through, forever fevered, idiocratic, laced with binary code, is crumbling around us like tunnels under the blast. The last, the last. So long, inferno song, this heavy diving dress I'm in, afraid of never touching another skin. Here's a little wink at Derrida, because there has to be a little bit of elevation in this book. It's called An Hauntology. The single-channel recon sky, its pyrite star deleted from a flooded loading bay, is crazed with fly ash, afterwar, irradiated glass. I'm retrofitting a memory to divert its trajectory. A crass wind shures the concrete pool. How easily tension will snap. Sirens grieving on either side of sleep. Uncanny. The sun shimmies out of its slipcase, a collage of altostratus detritus, shrapnel detaching from trees in a rush of crushed color. Illusion of a backlit milieu where they roll no sidewalks up. Shift Command Q. I turn my watch the long way round to make the familiar again. This poem was written in conjunction with Claudio Sant, who's a friend of mine and a fellow cyclist and a historian who teaches here during the pandemic, since we were all auditioning new hobbies and gardening and maybe new lovers or new places to live or whatever you people were doing. He got back into a series of electronica and analog, like battery operated stuff that he'd been putting off for a while. So we had a couple wonky, we didn't have conversations about this stuff. He told me on several bike rides about the wonky stuff he was doing with batteries. And he was treating books, including my own book, which he carved out and put batteries in and made it speak for itself. So I don't actually know what this title means. The title is Not And, with a dash in between. It has something to do with like how circuits work, radio circuits. But it was a good title, Not And. Ode, om, hum, him. Downlighting to clipped shadows under the sign of no counterfeit sun, where something has bowed below the threshold of sight. A breaker crashing the schizophonic shore. Should we leave, she asks. Are they coming for us? Are they already here? Drost effect. Inflicted, inflected, a scar cemented in air. Scare quotes blight my cornea, phosphorluminance after eclipse. World not long for this world. Under a hematoma sun, everyone I know has been broken down like a cardboard box. My demons hounded by demons of their own. I love my grad students. They're wearing sunglasses out here. You guys are so badass. I love it. It's incredible. They're just like bodyguards or something. You're not in a great position to help if anybody shoots, but like you look good. You guys look really good from up here. This is the last poem. Thanks everybody for coming out. We'll see you around. Target-rich environment. As seen from a second floor, aspen in moonlight, osseous, blanched. Their vascular overstory a lore of crow song, proto-echo, blades in the water of night, oars to row to war with. Daughter one, do you copy? Over. Daughter two, come in. At this hour, if I listen hard, I hear the rift in all things. Thank you. Now we can do this.
Andrew just told me that he would be very happy to sign books. So if you have your copies, and please meet Andrew, he'll sign books. Probably we have a desk out there, maybe. And if you don't have your copy, the books are sold right up here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Jamie, once again for making this happen. And big hand for Andrew once again.